Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Happy Easter, happy April Fool's Day, just happy spring, right? It's beautiful out there. Oh my goodness. So on this very special and sacred Easter morning, we celebrate the arisen soul. On this very special and sacred Easter morning, we celebrate the awakened heart. And on this very special and sacred Easter morning, we move into the realm of Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness, that's a really beautiful term, isn't it? Christ consciousness. So what does it mean? What does it mean in terms of a definition? And more importantly, what does it mean in terms of our lives? Well, let's look at the definition first, and then we're going to take it apart a little bit. What is consciousness? What is consciousness? Here's how I define consciousness. Consciousness is an amalgamation, a fusion, a commingling of our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and attitudes, values, words, and actions. Christ consciousness, then, is the consciousness, the thoughts, feelings, beliefs, attitudes, values, words, and actions of the person whose heart is awakened to the love and to their unique and perfect divinity. Christ consciousness is the consciousness of the person whose soul, meaning whose life force energy, has risen above the experience of the condition and into the realm of a higher understanding. Christ consciousness is the consciousness of the person who knows, who truly, truly knows who and whose they are. Whom do they belong to? Christ consciousness is the consciousness of the one who soars into the infinite possibilities of what it means to be a God being here on earth. What it means to be a God being here in the now. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm kind of signing up for that. It sounds really good, but in terms of having Christ consciousness alive in us, wow. Okay, so what does that mean? What does it mean to have it alive within us? It's great when you think something out there, okay, him or her, right? But what does it mean to have it inside of us? How do we do that? Well, I have some really terrific news here this morning. The moment you truly desire Christ consciousness, the moment you make a decision, the moment you set your intention that you will be how you will live your life, the moment you awaken to love, in that moment, you unlock the potential that is locked up inside of you to be just that. So it's all about setting our intentions and making that decision. It's always there. It's always there. You just have to awaken to it and arise in it. And your mere decision, choice, intention, determination, that is what unlocks it. That's what makes it start flowing, right? And it doesn't matter where you are in your life right now, what your current condition or situation is, nor does it matter where you've been in your life in the past. None of that matters, because at this moment, this very now moment, you can decide anew and you can arise anew. I like that affirmation. Let's say that together. I decide anew and I arise anew. I decide anew and I arise anew. All right, this is possible because of a principle that Jesus so beautifully showed us 2,000 years ago, and it's the resurrection principle. The resurrection principle says that the power of life, the power for life is stronger than anything else. And that goes along with his story that he shared from the Science of Mind this morning. We see its effect everywhere. Without the resurrection principle, every falling leaf would be a step toward the end of a tree's life. With every withered blossom, the flower would cease to be. With a cut finger or a bruise on the knee, our lifespan would be shortened. With every closed door, nothing else would open up for us. Without the resurrection principle, with every sorrow, discouragement, or despair, our faith and hope would be lost, never to return. But we know that none of those things occur because of the resurrection principle. And so that's our evidence that we can look and see every day and remind ourselves of when we're feeling in that discouraged place. The master teacher Jesus demonstrated the epitome of this principle, obviously, on Easter morning over 2,000 years ago. And we can demonstrate it in huge ways when we, despite what has occurred in our lives up until this moment, despite our circumstances or conditions that are surrounding us, when we make the decision, make the choice, make the determination to awaken our hearts to love and to arise into our highest potential in life. When we do this, we invoke the resurrection principle. When we do this, we might even say that we're on our own Easter journey. And as we each individually and collectively take the Easter journey, profound possibilities for launching us into a new era of beingness occur, and new possibilities for humankind transpire. Remember, everything that we're thinking and doing feeds into the collective consciousness. We have the power to raise that vibration. I love the work by Bishop John Shelby Spong. He's done a lot to bring the life and death of Jesus into clarity. In his book, Why Christianity Must Change or Die, he had this to say about Easter. Easter, with its story of the resurrection, can be transformed, I believe, and carry us into a new future. Yet before that is possible, the miracles of physical resurrection, the angels who roll stones away from tombs, and the bodies that appear out of nothing and disappear into thin air must be dismissed for the developed legends that they are. But life that transcends every human limit is a powerful portrait. Death, which opens all things to new possibilities. Love, which triumphs over hatred. Being, which overcomes non-being. Those are truths to which Easter points, and those are the truths that emerge when God is met on the edges and at the limits of our finite humanity. That is what the stories of the resurrection are all about. So, once we've made the decision to live in an awakened, arisen place of Christ consciousness, once we have decided to meet the God of our being on the edges and at the limits of our finite humanity, how do we actually live from that place? How do we live from that place? Because that is a key element here. Our decision, our choice, our determination unlocks the potential within us, but then living from that decision is what keeps the door open. It's easy to make a choice, but to live that choice each and every moment of the day, that's where we have to keep our focus. Let's look at a simple example that may just help. You may recall that shortly before his crucifixion, Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. Has anyone ever done that? Has anyone ever experienced the washing of the feet of
your disciples?
Years ago when I was little, I had a friend, older friend. His birthday was the same as mine, so he always gave me a gift. He washed his mother's feet every night because
I washed my feet.
Well, we did it as a sacred experience at our other church, our practitioner group. It was really a very moving experience.
I get pedicures.
Yeah. Okay. I was just sharing that it was yeah. So Peter mistook Jesus' intention, thinking that Jesus was teaching them to be humble in physical demonstration or to be a servant leader, which to some degree he probably was. But there was more. There was always more than what was on the surface of his teachings. Such a misinterpretation was not unusual. The disciples often didn't get Jesus' deeper meanings. And if we forget that the scripture is not about the persons or conditions cited, but rather is a metaphor for our relationship to the whole, we, just like the disciples, will mistake Jesus' teachings and will take them on face value alone. What was Jesus trying to teach by washing the disciples' feet? Well, symbolically, feet represent the spiritual foundation upon which we stand, the consciousness that feeds our experiences in life. In this case, Jesus was trying to tell his disciples and us that we are to keep the foundation clean and pure by being vigilant in washing away thoughts, feelings, beliefs, attitudes, values, words, and actions not founded in truth, not aligned with spiritual truth, not grounded in love. In this act of washing the disciples' feet, Jesus was calling them and is calling us to stand tall and strong in our unique and perfect divinity. He was calling them and us to stand tall and rising above the experience of any condition and into the realm of higher understanding. He was calling them and us to stand tall in the knowing of who and whose we are. He was calling them and us to stand tall and then soar into the infinite possibilities of what it means to be a God being here on earth. He was calling them and us to wash away anything that is unlike those things so that we can stand tall in Christ consciousness. This is the resurrection principle in action, and this is our Easter journey. Living the spiritual life means taking the Easter journey again and again and again, doesn't it? It's not just once a year. It's a lifetime commitment because we live in the material world. We get pulled into the material world, but we have the tools to again go on this journey when we need to. We take it whenever we begin to feel that we are less than a beautiful expression of the divinity. Whenever we begin to feel that the scars and the scrapes and the bumps and bruises of this life cause us to be less than whole, perfect, and complete. Whenever we forget that all of those things are merely a part of the journey of becoming who we are meant to be. We take our Easter journey whenever we get mesmerized by conditions and move into fear, doubt, worry, and upset so that we can rise above all of that and from a renewed consciousness, create a new experience. Create a new experience. And we take our Easter journey whenever we think we can't, because we absolutely can. If you were with us a while back, you may remember that I shared a story of a journey of a different sort. It was a beautiful story about the journey of the 2 clay pots. Do you remember the story of the 2 clay pots? Being carried up from the stream, from a stream to the master's house, and how one pot was cracked and felt so bad about never being able to deliver a full pot of water, never being able to live up to its full potential. Nobody remembers the sweet story? You remember the story? Okay. Well, that story has been turned into a beautiful poem by a beautiful young poet named Amy Love, who's absolutely awakened to the love and standing tall in her divinity, and I'm going to share it with you this morning. So it's definitely a story of an Easter journey that little clay pot took. It's called The Cracked Pot. The Cracked Pot. Okay. Each morning as her eyes opened, the dark-haired girl would yawn. Quickly she'd jump from her bed to gladly greet the dawn. Out of the back door and to the shed she'd run and grab her pole, affixing to each end of it a round baked clay bowl. She balanced the 2 vessels, then head down the dirt road until she reached the river where she'd gather up her load. Back up the hill to her abode, she'd wander from the stream, hauling pails of water while she'd whistle and daydream. One day she was in such a rush that as she flexed her back, one of the pots slid off the rod and landed with a whack. The poor clay pot, with horror, could feel all across one side the crack that had resulted. Silently, he cried. Every week the fear increased. He felt he couldn't pull his weight of the water for the team because he was half full. By the time they would reach the house, the pot would ache and hurt, feeling so ashamed that most of his efforts went to the dirt. In a vain attempt to hold his charge, he'd swing and he would tilt, directing water from the crack, but did nothing for the guilt. Yet every day the girl would come to fill up the reserve, and desperate for acceptance, the pot would sway and serve. For 2 whole years he did his best to hide the pain inside, even though with every drip he'd lose a bit more pride. It came to pass that finally this little pot of clay couldn't take it anymore and shared of his dismay. As the young girl went to put her tools safely in the shed, she heard a cry escape the pot and picked him up instead. "What's wrong?" she asked in disbelief, for never had she known that pottery could possibly be agony be prone. The broken pot tried to preserve what dignity was left, but as his broken speech would prove of hope, he was bereft. "I've tried my best to serve you well, to be strong instead of weak, but surely after all this time you've noticed that I leak. I hate that you are tasked with such a simple, easy chore, yet every day you fill me up, and out this crack I pour. I'm sorry that I failed you, and these feelings they do haunt. If I could but have one wish, to be whole is what I want." The little girl could feel his pain, but words she could not speak. Instead she simply nodded, then she lugged him to the creek. Together they approached the place where others drew their bath. Finally she spoke to him, while pointing to the path. "I know that you're embarrassed by the water that has flowed out of your crack, but do you see what has grown along the road?" For the first time in a while the pot was not consumed by all of his fear and doubts, so he took note of what had bloomed. "You see, dear pot, without your crack providing daily showers, my routine walk would not be filled with all these gorgeous flowers. 2 years ago, my careless acts resulted in a deed that left me feeling terrible, and so I planted seed. I'm sorrier than words can say to hear you've suffered guilt. I know you know, if not for you, I hope you know, if not for you, these blossoms soon would wilt. I understand just how you feel. I too had traits that daunt, but when I came to realize imperfections we should flaunt. You see, sweet pot, it's all those things, those cracks and scrapes and scars, that altogether help to shape us into who we are. The pot was overcome with joy, and as tears did pour out of his crack onto the ground, his heart began to soar. I'm grateful for your kindness, which has surely proved to purge me of all my fears and shame and doubt. I have now but just one urge. I'll do anything you ask of me that further will amend all of the pain I've caused for you, my fire-baked best friend. Tonight as we walk to the house, may we stop along the way? I'd like to bring my fellow pot a freshly picked bouquet. And so, on this very special and sacred Easter morning, let us each take our Easter journey, a journey that calls us to stand more fully and completely into who and whose we are. A journey that calls us to higher possibilities and higher love. A journey that awakens our hearts and raises our souls into Christ consciousness. And so it is.